Don Johnson and Barbra Streisand were the it couple of the 80s. But behind closed doors, their massive egos caused huge problems. Despite their problems, Streisand was determined to make it work, until a single phone call destroyed them forever. From a small-town kid born into poverty to TV superstar, Don Johnson's life had more twists than any character he played. He sought happiness in many places to no avail. Would he eventually find peace? Well, let's find out. Born on December 15, 1949 in Flat Creek, Missouri, Johnson moved to Wichita, Kansas at age 6. He wasn't born into wealth. His dad was a farmer and his mom a beautician. After finishing high school in 1967, Johnson enrolled in the theater program at the University of Kansas. He dropped out after a year but wasn't done with acting. He moved to San Francisco and joined the American Conservatory Theater, and it paid off. Getting closer to LA, Johnson landed his first film role in 1970's The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart. He felt pretty good about working with Academy Award-nominated producer Martin Paul. He thought he'd made it, but reality hit hard. Though he got his foot in the Hollywood door in 1970, Johnson struggled to make strides. He appeared in Zachariah, The Herod Experiment, and Return to Macon County, but none brought him fame. However, one of those films would impact him in a very different way. On the set of The Herod Experiment, Johnson met Melanie Griffith, daughter of his co-star Tippi Hedren. Johnson was 22, but Griffith was just 14. Despite the eyebrow-raising age gap, Tippi made no protest, and nothing could keep Johnson from Griffith. They met in 1972, and there was no shortage of love. Johnson, though initially skeptical, described Griffith as incredibly precocious and more mature than other women he'd met. He decided to pursue her, and got more than he bargained for. It's not exactly normal to pick your girlfriend up from high school after you've long since graduated, but Johnson did. He admitted it felt a little strange. Soon, he didn't have to. Griffith got expelled from Catholic school at 15 for questioning the religion and moved into a rental home in Hollywood with Johnson. Though they seemed settled, more drama loomed. They lived together until splitting in 1975. A year later, while Johnson was meeting former Miss World Marjorie Wallace, Griffith called him at 4 or 5 in the morning. Johnson said they professed undying love and flew to Las Vegas to get married in 1976. It was dramatic, but the renewed spark quickly faded. Their marriage wasn't a happy ending. Griffith later said it felt doomed from the start. She viewed it as a way to end the relationship since they knew it wasn't working but couldn't split up. Not the least toxic of relationships. Their union wasn't meant to be, but something good was coming Johnson's way. While his relationship with Griffith was a roller coaster, his acting career began gaining traction. In 1975, he starred in A Boy and His Dog, which earned him a Saturn Award for Best Actor in 1976. He tied with acting legend James Caan, proof of the effort Johnson put in. He even had to do something pretty interesting to fully commit to the role. Don's acting in A Boy and His Dog involved a lot of improvising and imagination. The role required him to act as if he could understand a telepathic dog. His biggest struggle, according to Johnson, was making it believable. The credit he got for this role was well-deserved, but it wouldn't be entirely helpful for him. Johnson claimed the sudden popularity from A Boy and His Dog unnerved him. He wasn't ready for the spotlight, and it sent him down a dark path. He began relying on booze and drugs to cope. By the late 70s, he was deeply addicted to various narcotics. Eventually, he felt trapped in that lifestyle, but that wasn't his only trap. After splitting from Melanie Griffith, Johnson had many short-lived relationships. From 1976 to 1980, he dated Lynn Whitfield, Tanya Tucker, and Sally Sheridan. 3 relationships in 4 years. A year after that cycle, he would get a wake-up call. In 1981, meeting Patty D'Arbonville changed his life. This relationship produced a baby, Jesse Johnson. When Patty learned she was pregnant, she decided to keep the baby. They stayed common-law partners but didn't marry, yet Jesse's birth would have a major impact on Don. Johnson wasn't ready for fatherhood. Darbanville thought of leaving him, calling him a beautiful and talented man, spinning out. But before she could, Don told her he wanted to address his destructive habits. Whether he'd take that seriously remained to be seen. Surprisingly, after years of struggling, Johnson's rehab went smoothly. Darbanville, who'd faced similar issues, guided him. Even she was shocked when it only took 45 days for Don to kick his habits. His fast recovery felt miraculous, but he'd need another miracle for his career. Even with his life back on track, Johnson feared his career was over. Physically unfit, casting directors compared his auditions to bringing in a relief pitcher. No one took him seriously, but that would soon change. By now, his 1976 Best Actor award was just a memory. After 14 years of trying to break into TV, Don finally got his big break in 1984, landing the iconic role of James Sonny Crockett in Miami Vice. Playing Sonny Crockett made Johnson iconic. Miami Vice launched him into international stardom. Rolling Stone even said, "No one had more swagger in the Reagan era than Don Johnson." And Don showed his enthusiasm through his dedication. This was Johnson's biggest opportunity in years, and he wasn't going to waste it. He lived a healthy lifestyle, working out, eating clean, and was committed to his role. He even made suggestions on how to portray Crockett, which stood out in a significant way. Flamboyant, to say the least, Sonny Crockett wore brands like Versace and Hugo Boss over pastel shirts. He even sported luxury watches from Rolex and drove a white Ferrari. Think of him as the hype beast of his era, flaunting designer brands in that cool guy aura. Don Johnson set trends, but it would eventually become too much to handle. Although grateful for his rising fame, Johnson struggled to adjust to the spotlight. He admitted it could be debilitating. Still, he credits Miami Vice with his relevance, calling the experience exhilarating and exciting. Off-screen, however, life was just as wild. Don's escapades were, let's just say, adventurous. Spontaneous by nature, he once flew to Mexico just to get Mexican food. Forget different restaurants, Don would go to different countries for a craving. And that wasn't the only extravagant move he made. He mingled with Hollywood's elite, but one meeting stood out. At a 1987 Christmas party, with guests like Jack Nicholson, Bruce Willis, and Oprah Winfrey, he met Barbra Streisand. Johnson was big, but Streisand was massive. Still, sparks flew, and they made things official. The couple revealed their status just a month later, but not at some romantic venue. They went public at the 1988 Mike Tyson-Larry Holmes boxing match. Not the most sentimental place, but public perception was the least of their concerns. The Johnson-Streisand couple had star power, but maybe too much. As People magazine put it, they had two of the biggest egos this side of Frank Sinatra. A force, yes, but perhaps one that imploded. It didn't shock many when it ended. Compatibility aside, Johnson had met his match. Streisand wasn't one to back down, often clashing with Johnson's very stubborn personality. She was even described as hard as her well-tended nails. You think they could make it work? Some felt Streisand was too sincere for Johnson. People magazine noted that she was known for opening doors for her partners and going all out for the men in her life. Meanwhile, Johnson's relationships were known to be chaotic at best, yet Streisand tried to make it last. She even embraced his destructive partying. Labels like tough and difficult were familiar to her, and she defended him, saying much of his bad image was not true. For once, Don had someone in his corner. But an old flame would soon complicate things. For reasons unknown, Johnson couldn't let go of his past with Melanie Griffith, even while dating Barbra Streisand. He reconnected with Griffith to help her check into rehab, and that phone call reignited their spark. Johnson was about to betray Streisand. Soon after, he and Griffith rekindled their relationship. His time with Streisand ended in under a year. Still, he spoke highly of her, calling her fascinating and thanking her for opening his eyes to a lot of things. But fate had other plans. By early 1989, Dawn and Melanie were back together for their third try and second marriage. This time, they had a child, none other than Dakota Johnson. Yes, that Dakota Johnson, who would later achieve fame from 50 Shades of Grey. Her birth was a major milestone, but not the only one that year. The idea that all good things must come to an end is something Dawn realized when he knew there was nowhere he could further push the character of Sonny Crockett. Therefore, he decided to call it quits in 1989. He even stated that he was starting to get fatigue from playing this role continuously. However, even though Johnson's time on Miami Vice concluded, Sonny would continue to be part of Dawn's life. Separating the actor from the role wasn't so easy for Don Johnson and Sonny Crockett. Though, in truth, Don took it a step above Sonny in reality. He spent a lot of his time investing in boats, cars, and other luxury items. Speaking of larger than life, how about purchasing a private jet and an entire ranch to top that off? Well, Don Johnson did all of that. It looked like a life of glitz and glam, but, as always, there was more than met the eye. It seemed that with the recent birth of his daughter, plus his fame and success, Don Johnson would be someone on top of the world. Not so. Don's spending sprees never filled up his gaping feelings of emptiness. According to him, the reason why he would buy all these different things was to try and cover up that patch. He wanted to find a way to stop feeling utterly miserable and thought this was the way to do so. Of course, he couldn't have been more wrong. Even after cleaning up his act to get the part on Miami Vice, Don admitted to his on and off relationship with drinking and narcotics throughout his career. His continuous struggles were intensely unhappy times, and he even wondered how long he could keep living the way he was. Yet, while Johnson was in a tussle with his demons, he never lost his composure when it came to work. Amid dealing with his personal vices, Don always exemplified professionalism. On the set of Harley-Davidson and the Marlboro Man, Johnson had to wait up on no-show Mickey Rourke for a makeup and hair test. Rather than give in to anger, Don reportedly sorted things out with Rourke and they ended up having a fun relationship. But speaking of fun relationships on set, never mix business with family. Ever hear that quote before? It certainly never applied to Johnson, who ended up working on consecutive movies with his then-wife, Melanie Griffith. This was first with the 1991 movie Paradise, and in 1993 with Born Yesterday. Johnson recalled the experience as being fantastic, since they could work and then go home together. These seemed like happy times for the Johnson family, but things would soon take a quick turn for the worse.
For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details.
Through sharing a child to working on movies together, Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith had a seemingly picture-perfect partnership, but behind the scenes, the cracks were beginning to show once again. By the time 1994 came around, they had simply cooled off on the fire-burning passion they once had. While both cited irreconcilable differences as the reasoning for their split, they would always have a connection through their child, according to Johnson. Although this was an unfortunate end, Don would eventually find true happiness. In 1999, Johnson fell in love with Kelly Flager. Unlike a lot of the other flings Don had, Flager came from a humble background. She wasn't a musician or an actress like his ex-wife, but rather a school teacher. Not exactly a Hollywood household name, but she might have been exactly the type of person Don was always looking for. When Don married Kelly in 1999, it marked another turning point in his life. He would finally give up the vices that were tormenting him for such a long time. In his words, he jettisoned the drinking habits and gave up the 20 cars. In this surprising turnaround, Don would credit his newfound beliefs for the change in his life. The former Hollywood bad boy compared his life experiences to being on a spiritual journey. He explained his shortcomings as if trying to break open lots of oysters, from which he suffered lots of pain in the attempts to do so. For him, those oysters were initially his indulgence towards drinking, narcotics, and materialism. Through these lessons, he would finally find what really brought him peace and happiness. After Don Johnson's arduous path of finding peace, he finally ended up getting his answer: family. He had 3 more children with Kelly Flager and wanted to make up for the time lost with his 2 older children. Don considered this a sacred life to value with the people he loves. Finally, he could play the role that brought him true happiness: being a father. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want a say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.